Welcome to the National Center for School Engagement. Today we are presenting attendance, attachment, and achievement. We're talking about creating and implementing the problem-solving court, which you guys have done a very good job of doing. So we want to go over some best practices and talk about some of the things that are research-based, some techniques, some strategies, and how do we make our problem-solving court the best it can be for our students and families. So with that, I have presenting with me today Chief Judge Dennis Mays, and we'll be talking a little bit about ourselves.
Okay, Terry, thank you for the introduction. My name is Dennis Mays, and I am a retired district court judge. I was a judge for 24 years, the last 17 years of which I served as the chief judge of the district. And the latter part of my career, I spent a great deal of time working with children in truancy, delinquency, and I also handled the mental health docket. They all kind of coalesced in some ways. But I became interested in the truancy reduction, some 25 years or so ago with Terry introduced me to the program she had. I was pretty much a skeptic at first and was able to come around and see the importance of having the courts involved in truancy reduction with the schools, and have come to conclude that the most successful truancy reduction programs are those where there is a close collaboration between the schools and the courts. And of course, the court has an opportunity to bring many resources to the table. I think it's very important to understand that the court is not involved in the program as a punitive measure, but as one that can provide many of the resources that are necessary to address the root causes of truancy. So one of the things that we've done throughout is extolled the virtues and the strengths of our students and our families, and also brought together the community as a whole to recognize that the education of our children is a community endeavor, and that everyone needs to be involved in order for our children to succeed. So it was that in mind that I became interested in the work. Quite frankly, it was started by Terry some years ago and turned into a very, very good and productive program, which, by the way, took a lot of work along the way. I have since been retired for about 13 years now, but I still do some lecturing across the country and the state, as you can see from this presentation here. So I'm just excited about working with you folks, and appreciate the fact that you realize the importance that school attendance has in the formulation of a very productive society, and more importantly, an opportunity for each one of our children to be able to experience the greatest experience they can in their educational process, by making it something that's relevant to them, and also by providing the resources that they and their families need in order to get involved in a successful educational opportunity. I'll turn it back to you, Terry.
Thank you, Judge. So a little bit about myself. As I was growing up, my parents and my grandparents were both foster parents, so I never really knew what it was like growing up in just a regular biological family. We always had different children living with us with different needs, different backgrounds, and it was very exciting, to say the least, to have different families living with us. All I knew was, social workers coming and going, and of course my dad was an educator, so there were two backgrounds of which way to go with my future with regard to my education and my work experience. So started out being a social worker and a mental health therapist. What I was finding is that, being a social worker is hard work, especially when you're working in the foster care system. A lot of traumatic events, a lot of, trying to help people and getting people what they need so they could be functioning members of their families. From there, decided I wasn't making enough money, so I go be a teacher. And of course, that gave me like a $5 pay raise a month. So tried doing that. Started out as a special education teacher. From there, went into doing work as a truancy officer in the school district. And then from there, was assistant principal at an alternative school and became the director of student support services for our school district. Still maintain doing side work as a mental health therapist part-time. What I found in my truancy work was the same kids that I was chasing during the day were also the same kids that I was treating for mental health illnesses or evaluating to see if they needed hospitalization due to suicidal behaviors, due to unsafe behaviors, whatever behaviors they were presenting with, and getting the help that they needed within our community. And so I thought that was very interesting. At the same time, our daytime crime rate was up very high. We found kids on basketball courts. We found kids, pretty much everywhere in the community. We didn't find them in school. And so it was really kind of a mission of mine to figure out why kids are not going to school and why is it that they are not entering those doors. When I was a truancy officer, I remember going on the basketball court and actually playing with some of the guys that were on the basketball court. And, we started to talk and we talked about, hey, what do you think about maybe let's try to go back to school. Let's see, they're really missing you guys. They're really trying hard to get everybody back in school. Let me give you a ride. I'll even walk in with you. So we walked into the school and we went into the assistant principal's office, and he looked right at me and he goes, yeah, can I help you? And I said, well, I'm here with Johnny and Joe, and we're here to get back into school. I found them, and I was just elated. I'm thinking, yes, I'm getting kids re-engaged back in school. He looked up at me and he said, well, yeah, I've been looking for them too, so it's going to be a 5-day suspension. From there, I thought something needed to be done. We can't do this. We cannot have schools that are not inviting their kids in and welcoming and embracing their kids when they're coming back to school. So that I went back to the office and we started looking up different grants and things like that. Came across a big grant from Colorado Department of Education that was talking about truancy reduction. And it was a pilot grant, and it really didn't have a whole lot of expectations. They wanted us just to create a program to go forward and to move forward in implementing best practices and how to engage our kids in school, how to keep them in school. More importantly, how do we get them to graduation? So we went in and it took us about a year, and we needed to get all of our stakeholders at the table. And thank goodness, Judge Mays was very, I had gone and talked to him, and we met, and he said, Terry, quite frankly, I need to tell you, I don't think that the courts have any place in the schools. And I said, Judge, just come to a meeting. And so he said, well, okay. And came to a meeting and sat in the back in the corner. as we started talking, we had people from the mental health facility, we had people from Boys and Girls Club, we had people from various social service agencies, to plan what kind of program we're putting together. So he's scooting up his chair little by little, and full force. Judge is very involved in the meeting, and I'll tell you, he's our champion. He is the reason why this program went as far as it did, and it's why we're doing the work that we are right now nationally. You'll hear him say many times, the biggest, the greatest achievement is the court system and also the schools to work together. And we're not talking from a punitive standpoint of view. Please, I'm going to make that very strong right now. We're talking about how do we problem solve to get our kids into school. So with that, Judge, do you have anything to add from there?
Well, it's, I think it's just, it's important to continue to remember that what we're trying to do here is solve problems. And that includes the whole family. So we have to be holistic in our approach to what we're doing things. We're not going to get any place with blame, shedding blame, and reliving old wounds that some of these families have from their past experiences with school. So it's very important, in my opinion, to have the, I guess, for lack of a better word, the clout that the court might have. Again, not from a punitive standpoint, but from a standpoint of bringing the resources together. It was, Terry mentioned earlier on that it took us about a year to establish the program that was finally adopted by the school district. And it was a very rigorous program that we were on. But it took us a year because we wanted to be mindful of everybody's involvement. We wanted to remove the silos that were out there, and those instances when many of the agencies felt that they were in competition with each other. And it was important, and we were successful in showing, no, you're not in competition. You're just an additional resource for these kids. And by the way, we're going to be a lot stronger with everybody in it. So in putting the program together, we respected everybody's viewpoints, made sure that everyone was heard. And at the end of the day, when we drafted the program, it was with the full consensus of all of our stakeholders. I would add that as a result of the success that we found in doing this, that the school board did at that time and continues to make a very substantial contribution out of the general fund to address the truancy problems in our particular community.
Thank you, Judge. So today we're going to be talking about some of the attendance facts, and then going over the attachment facts and some of the strategies, best practices and strategies that we utilized and continue to train our programs in order to get the outcomes that we need for our kids and families to be successful. And then achievement. If we have all this, our kids are going to graduate. So we at the National Center for School Engagement believe in the 3 A's. The 3 A's are attendance, attachment, and achievement. And we really feel like in order for our kids to attend school, we really need to have someone who is a key figure, someone that they trust in their school building, someone who will welcome them. If they're having some kind of a problem, who are their go-tos? Who are the people that could really help them if they're really failing a class, or if they're having some problems with some of their peers, or if they're having problems within their homes and they're needing some resources? Who's that safe person they can go to so they can help out in order to get the family back on their feet again? And then if we do have attendance and if we do have that attachment, of course, we're going to see that achievement because our kids will be in school and they're going to be productive because we're providing those safety nets so they're able to achieve.
I think perhaps the most important legal decision ever to face education was the Brown versus Board of Education decision that was rendered back in May 17th of 1954. So it's been what, 46, whatever the math is, since that time, almost to the day. And I think it's important to at least quote a little bit from that particular decision, where Justice Warren says it is today it is, and we're talking about education, is the very foundation of good citizenship. Today it is a principal instrument in awakening the child to cultural values, in preparing him for later professional training, and in helping him to adjust normally to his environment. In these days, it is doubtful that any child may reasonably be expected to succeed in life if he is denied the opportunity of an education. Such an opportunity, where the state has undertaken to provide it, is a right which must be made available to all on equal terms. And that spirit a lot of the work that's going on today, and matter of fact, some of the challenging things that we're having today. It would be good for people to go back and read that particular opinion of the United States Supreme Court. But it entails more than that. It means more than just getting our kids to school. It means making it a process and experience that is going to be fulfilling for them for their entire lives. So we have to provide all of the resources that are necessary in order to make it that kind of an experience for these children. It dawned on me over the course of my career as a judge. I presided over just about every kind of court you can imagine. And it's very telling to me that when I look at the adult criminal docket that I used to handle, that the vast majority of those folks that were in criminal court that were going to prison never went to high school. It was clear as could be. I mean, and we all know about some of the other economic concerns we have when we have children that aren't going to school, and we'll talk about those things a little bit later as well. So I think what resonated back in 1954 will have the same truth today that it did back then, and will have the same truth in the next 50 years. So we can never, ever devalue the need to educate our children and to provide every possible resource we can and address every need that they may have in order so that they can have a successful educational experience. Just about every state has well, I think every state does, as a matter of fact, has a mandatory, compulsory mandatory attendance law. And in the state of Washington, children are required to go to school from the ages to 8 to 18. It was spurred by the Becca bill, which required virtually all children to attend school with certain exceptions, those including private schools, homeschooling, or certified education centers. Although the vast majority of the states also do not give those schools a free pass. They have a lot of requirements that they have to comply with to show that they're a genuine school that's being operated. And so, like all of these, well, Washington, as well as some of the other states, have their own way of defining what is truancy and what are excused absences, what are non-excused absences. And it's based on those particular set of circumstances and that data that determines what kind of involvement the courts and the schools are going to have with those children that might find themselves petitioned into court because of a lack of desire to go to school or a lack of ability to go to school. When I say desire, The vast majority of the kids that we've ever dealt with wanted to be in school, but there were a lot of other reasons, including food insecurity, transportation issues, mental health issues, a parent overwhelmed with raising a number of children, the children having to help the parent in many circumstances. So it was incumbent upon on those of us involved in the program to make sure that, one, that our children were getting to school, and secondly, those reasons that were keeping them from getting them there were being addressed with the parents as well, so that we were in this partnership together. And I think that pretty much covers, the need to go to school. And in Colorado, in 2 separate years, we increased the school attendance from 7 to 16 to 6 to 17. We felt that the more kids spent in school, we were going to reach that goal that Terry talked about in making sure that our kids graduated. So there was work to be done on the legislative side as well, in terms of how we were going to bolster any truancy reduction program that we have in our community.
So some key points about school attendance in Washington State. The National Center for School Engagement was very active in the Becca bill. Dr. Ken Seeley, I know, did a lot of work in Washington State during that time in providing information about truancy. This is not an area where there's a whole lot of research done. It's hard work when we're doing truancy work. So the key points about the school attendance in Washington State: it's mandatory for most children ages 8 to 18. They're generally required to attend public school. Of course, Judge did talk about some of the exceptions that we had, and the attendance requirements. Students must attend school full-time every day unless there's a valid excuse. And then how they define truancy. If a student misses school without a valid excuse, they may be considered truant, and the school is obligated to notify the family and work with them to address the issue. There can be some legal actions. School can file a truancy petition with the juvenile court if a student accumulates a certain number of excused absences, typically 7 in a month or 15 in a school year. Again, I'd like to point out that, it would really be nice if all of our schools could follow these frameworks. But as we know, we're resource deficient, and both on the judicial side and on the school side. And so we're going kind of backwards in our work when we don't have a real positive process of the interventions that are to be implemented every time there is an absence. And so we'll talk a little bit about that more in future slides. So I know you guys have some community engagement boards, and in some cases, truancy petition may be referred to a community engagement board, which works with the family in the school to address the reasons for the absences. So it's not just going straight to truancy court. Although there are programs that really do not have their interventions in place at the school level, which is very unfortunate, because a lot of our cases can be solved at the school level if we have the master plan, the will, and the dedication from everyone within the school. Again, truancy is a community issue. It is not just a school issue. It is something that the community needs to take responsibility for. During our studies, when we were keeping our data, we were able to find that the daytime crime rate, as our attendance rate went up, daytime crime rate went down. As we were able to work more with our kids from a strength-based perspective. We were able to create programs that kids really enjoyed doing. We had anything from volleyball leagues to golf clubs to we had the symphony coming into schools. We had lots of different things that our kids were interested in. We also had a lot of input from our sport teams, the Denver Broncos and the Denver Nuggets and the Avalanche, really supporting us, providing football camps for our kids. We were able to take them to Nuggets games. We were able to take them to different outings. And our community is kind of a medium-sized community, but we do have a lot of poverty in our community. So our kids don't get those experiences of leaving our community. If you go to our mall, they wouldn't even know what an escalator was. So when we took them to the Denver Nuggets game, we thought that since our kids love to play basketball, and that's what most of our kids did for the majority of the time, I would look around and they would not be sitting in their seats. They would be playing on the escalator because they had never seen one before. So it's giving those opportunities for our kids to go and experience another way of life besides the way of life that they have been raised and only know. And that's what we
If I could jump in here, Terry, just anecdotally, it's talking about truancy being a community responsibility and doing the things that we're talking about here. Yeah, one thing that we need to step back on a little bit is to make sure that when we talk about the court system as well, that court is the last resource, not a resort, not the first. We want to try all of our alternative methods of trying to get kids in school before we even think about going into court. And then once we get into court, again, we do that because of the vast number of resources the court can bring to the problem. But from an anecdotal standpoint, we have in Pueblo, I serve on the school board here, and one of the programs we started was a program called Adopt a School. And what we did is we went out into the community and asked businesses to be involved in our schools. And by doing that, adopt a school and have particular events that the school and that particular partner would engage in. I ran into one of the gentlemen who was with the area realtors group here in town, who has been very, very active. And he was telling me they just had their end of the year meeting with their kids from Columbian School here in town, where they took them down for rides down on the Riverwalk in the boats and stuff like that. And then had a nice big pizza.
I think Judge froze. Ian, are you able to hear on that end?
Yes.
Okay, I think we're having some technical difficulty on Judge's end. But what Judge is saying is that we do have various community groups that are coming in, and they are, sponsoring school events. We also have individuals from different companies coming in, and they will be mentors to kids, and they will also do lunch buddies. Well, they'll bring in, lunch and have a lunch with some of their students. So that's one thing that's been very, very successful. They've also been able to take their kids to their work jobs for a day, just to introduce them to, what kind of work they do and what are some of the things that that could be of interest to them. So again, getting the community involved, getting them, to really participate in helping helping our kids and getting our kids going. So I kind of finished up what you were saying, Judge. And I know we had some technical difficulties, but I was able to finish up to what you were saying with regard to getting our community involved and then having the employees get involved with the kids at the school and serving as mentors and doing lunches with them and those types of activities.
Right now, Terry, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 community partners that go into those different schools and interact with the children.
That's cool. Okay. So Becca's Law, let's go ahead and play this for you guys. This was recently, is it not going to play?
In any event, what it was is the effort by those folks that realized the need to have some support from the legislature in terms of truancy, which was, as Terry mentioned, Kent City worked very hard in getting Becca's Law established. And I think it's a good point at this time, Terry, to once again emphasize how important it is to have someone in the legislature who is a champion for education in order to get things done that or addressed that might be a need. At least you have someone that's a voice for you in that area.
Right. And, you know, with regard to Becca's Law, like I said, you know, Dr. Kinsey was very involved in that bill. And I'm sure you guys are all familiar with the Becca bill, but this was a little girl that ended up missing. They could not find her, and unfortunately found her, and it was not a good outcome. So that's where they were talking a lot about when kids are missing or not going to school, how important it is to record those absences and to make sure that those absences, someone is going around and investigating why our kids are not in school. Okay, next slide. So the importance of a regular school attendance. So we really need to make sure that our kids are present on time. You know, we can look as early as preschool and kindergarten at the success and how successful our kids are going to be. If they're missing a lot of kindergarten or a lot of preschool, those kids are going to be probably some of the kids that are really lagging behind. We've got to set the bar and the standard high right when they start, because those early learning skills are so critically important to have under their belt once they start getting into first grade, second grade, third grade. You know, interesting fact that when Judge and I went and we were advocating to pass the law to take the mandatory attendance age down 1 year, we had a lot of members from the PTA come out and protest. And they felt like kids needed to be at home at the age of 6 years old. They did not need to be in school, that they needed to be at home, they needed to be nurtured. There's just no way that they needed to be in school. And if we look at studies about brain development and all the things the kids can learn, we know that that is so critically important that they're learning those skills at that age. That's right when, you know, all those neurons are firing and the pathways to the brain are going. So learning is very systematic in most subject areas, such as in math and science. And if they're not here today, then they are going to be lost tomorrow. And we all know, looking back at our college days and high school days, how critically it was important to be there, because if we would show up a couple of days later, we would be lost, and same thing goes for our kids. It's hard to get them caught up. Right now I'm doing some special ed teaching, and a lot of my kids do have attendance issues, and their math and their language arts skills are really lagging behind. And part of it is because of their learning disability, but a lot of it is because of the instruction that they have missed. So excessive absenteeism not only affects current school year, but also their future achievement in going through the rest of their grade school, middle school, and high school years, especially those transition years. That 5th to 6th grade transition is very important, because you're going from kids being in one classroom to middle school where they're attending six different classes with 6 different teachers. That's very difficult for our kids to do. So we've got to make sure that we're doing a good job at the school level in helping them with transition activities and introducing them to different teachers who are teaching. Poor attendance allows students the time to engage in negative activities. We talked about that, about the daytime crime rate. Absenteeism leads to increased school day dropout rates. As we did a study with Johns Hopkins University, and what we found is that if kids really did have a lot of absences, if kids had 3 or more suspensions during the school year, their attendance was poor, and they were failing the areas of reading and also math, the less of a chance that they had of graduating. So we really need to pay attention to those early warning signs. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on. But our schools are based on our student attendance rates. In some states they are. And so, and also student count rates. So it's so critically important, especially as we see a decline in student enrollment, that we make sure all kids are present.
One thing to add as well is whatever milestones you might be thinking of setting in terms of saying, okay, this is where we need to draw the line on something. Make sure you have complete fidelity to your milestones. Don't start compromising them. Don't don't start making exceptions. Well, this school does this or this school does that. I would suggest that it's very important to be consistent in the message that you're sending out, whether it be in your elementary students schools or whether in your middle schools, so that what you're expecting from them in the 2nd and 3rd grade, they should know that it's going to be expected of them as well as they climb up the educational ladder.
So very true. So the most recent federal data shows that in 2021 school year, at least 14.7 million students nationwide were chronically absent. So this isn't just a Washington issue. This is a United States issue. This means that chronic absence has almost doubled more from than 8 million students pre-COVID who were missing so many days of school that they were academically at risk. Chronic absence is really defined as missing 10% or more days of school due to absences for any reason, whether they're excused or not excused. And then also, if we're looking at suspensions, you know, we don't count suspensions as unexcused absences. In fact, we do have another program or another presentation that is called Alternatives to Suspension. And I know you guys do have some restorative justice programs that you use. And I think that's wonderful if we could use more of the restorative justice models in place of doing suspensions. When kids like to be at home, especially if there's trouble and they're not doing well. What a great escape that is for them. And there's some times where you do have to implement the suspension rule, you know, especially if it's a danger to themselves or others. But, you know, the fact that they don't bring a pencil to school or to class, or, you know, they said, shut up to the teacher or something like that. I'm not saying that that's good behavior, but I'm saying that there's other ways to deal with behavior than just suspending them. The worst thing we can do is withhold education from our kids. And some may say, well, they're withholding it from themselves. Well, yeah, with their behavior, yeah, maybe. But you know what? We as adults can figure out different ways, so we're not withholding education.
One thing I might caution at this point as well is that to not get caught up in the semantics of what we call excused and unexcused absences. We might have a child who has a great number of excused absences. That does not mean what that should signify to somebody is that there's something else going on someplace else. So the fact that they're excused shouldn't withhold us from trying to find out why. Why do we have so many, even though they are excused? Why do we have so many excused absences? And what is it that we can do to make that number disappear over the course of time after we make a determination as to what the cause of the excused absence is? So don't get caught up on the term excused and unexcused and let that be the deciding factor. If kids are not in school for whatever reason, we need to know why and figure out what we need to do in order to get them there.
Judge, you really bring up a good point. Documentation is so critically important. And talking to your grade level people, also talking to your administration, figuring out why they're not coming to school. You know, I can't tell you how important it is to document their reasons. Is it the time of the month that they're missing? Is it the time of day that they're missing? You know, tardies eventually lead into absences. So if we have kids with chronic tardiness, those are the kids we need to watch too, because, you know, obviously they're missing academics, and sometimes tardies lead to later and later and later until they don't show. So we need to make sure that we're documenting everything, and then looking at your data and talking about that data in your teams, because what you know may not be someone else who is working with that student knows. Coming together and discussing the reasons for those absenteeisms. Okay, next. So when we see absenteeism the first month of school, we could pretty much predict that that's going to be a big challenge for the rest of the school year. Half the students who miss 2 to 4 days in September go on to miss nearly a month of school. So we've got to come down on that attendance right from the beginning. You know, our school district has signs and billboards that they put up throughout the city to remind kids the value and the importance of attending school. Again, using your community to get that word out. We did have a problem where kids were ditching school and going to the local 7-Eleven. We met with 7-Eleven and talked to them and So the kids were not allowed in 7-Eleven during school hours unless they were with one of the employees from the school. So, get in your community to not reinforce uh, them not going to school. Chronic absence appears to have doubled by the end of the 21-22 school year. We estimate now that it affects nearly 1 in 3 students, 16 million versus 8 million in the 2018-19 school year. And of course, COVID did a big job on us. Kids got used to staying at home. Lots of different issues happened during COVID. Lots of food insecurities, housing insecurities, lots of mental illness, lots of physical, emotional abuse. Our kids saw it all. And COVID really, a lot of our families didn't come out of it very well. Kids experience a lot of loss of loved ones due to COVID. So, and we're still trying to play catch up with COVID. So, as we talked about before, we've got to really make sure that we are looking at those patterns in first grade kindergarten. And kindergarten absence is associated with lower academic performance, both in reading and math. And we're finding that, our largest growing population is a Latino population. So therefore, those are the ones that are being hardest hit right now. So we did a couple of articles with regard to the LA Times really called and asked what we thought about attendance and really focusing in on those early grades and why kids may not go to school. We talked about, there's a lot of reasons why kids don't go to school. Are there bullying issues? Have they been mistreated? Sometimes their parents didn't see the school as a safe place during their own childhoods. That's a generational thing. So, they didn't feel safe. So we had a lot of parents. There's a lot of work to be done with parents and making sure that they feel safe coming into the school and feeling safe enough to send their kids to school. The world today, it's pretty scary, everything that's going on. And so we really need to work on how can we have school safety laws and being practiced and being fluent with them to ensure the safety and the welfare and well-being of our children. Okay, next one. So some facts about our kids and school attendance. We know that kids who live in communities with high levels of poverty are 4 times more likely to be chronically absent than others, often for reasons beyond their control, such as unstable housing, unreliable transportation, and a lack of access to health care. Children living in poverty are 2 to 3 times more likely to be chronically absent and face the most harm because their community lacks the resources to make up for the lost learning in school. Schools from community of color as well as disability are disproportionately affected. Where we have communities with large immigrant populations, mobility can occur when families move back and forth temporarily to their country of origin. We had families in our schools that would follow the crop seasons. So they'd constantly be moving from one locale to another, depending on what crop was there. And, it was a matter of survival. They needed to work. They needed to feed their family. Again, we have families that the older kids have to stay at home because so they could babysit the younger kids while guardian goes to work. Lots of different reasons why our kids are not at school. And our highly mobile kids are really the ones that that are really impacted, moving back and forth between communities, back and forth. And, kids have to get settled in different schools and get that stability and making new friends and all of that new kind of stuff. That's really difficult for them. So just starting and getting them engaged again. So when students improve their attendance rate, they improve their academic prospects and chances for graduating. And we know that attendance improves when schools engage students and parents in positive ways, and when schools provide mentors for chronically absent students. Judge was talking about that, and they do a fantastic job in building those relationships and making sure that our kids feel attached to school. Most school districts don't really look at the right data and how to improve their school attendance. A lot of times what we run into when we're going in is we're asking, well, who's responsible for your school attendance? Well, the school secretary. Okay, so the school secretary. So what happens if a child is absent? Well, if they have time, then they'll make a call home if they can, or we'll do a robocall like your kid was absent today, and we need that human touch. We need someone out there finding out why our kids are not in school. Our secretaries are loaded down beyond, a compare, and expecting them to do all of that work, or just our counselors just to do all of the attendance work, that's really expecting a lot. And I'll guarantee your attendance rates aren't very good if that's how the school is functioning. Judge, you have anything to add?
No, I think you hit it on the head there. We always have to be very vigilant about what's going on, why kids are not in school, and address. You're going to hear me say this 100 times, but address those root causes again. And again, fidelity is very important. When you talk about data, it's only as good as the data that you attract. And if you say, well, we did okay now, let's let a couple of weeks go by before we do something, you're going to find yourself in trouble. Stay with the program the entire time.
Okay, so we talk about all these facts. So let's talk about what are some of the interventions that we can go ahead and do. And so we're going to watch a little video about the program that we implemented, and we might need to go on a short break just so we can pull up the video. So we're going to, can we go to the next slide and see if I could pull it up? Let's see if I can.
Dennis Mays. I'm the Chief Judge of the 10th Judicial District. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you some thoughts about Project Respect, the truancy reduction program in Pueblo, Colorado. I and Judge Deborah Eiler dedicate 6 dockets a week to the truancy reduction program. And at that time, we will hold periodic reviews of the students, and we will take a look at their attendance, their academic performance, and their behavior in school. Each of those is equally important to us in developing the best student that we possibly can. We do that by identifying the cause or causes of truancy, and then employ whatever resources we have to eliminate those causes. Community advocates are the lifeblood of the program. They are the ones that provide the liaison between the courts, the families, and any other agency involved with our children. I am proud of the program. I am proud to say that since the institution of the program, that our graduation rate has increased and our dropout rate has decreased. I would encourage all districts to establish a truancy reduction program in their respective districts. Thank you. If a child does not at least graduate from high school, their lives are going to be difficult forever.
Major statistic that drives me and has always driven me is that 80% of the prison population are high school dropouts.
The Center for the Prevention of Violence at the University of Colorado has done extensive longitudinal study of the impact of truancy. What they studied was a group of about 1,500 12 to 15-year-olds in Colorado and followed that group of kids for 20 years. And they wanted to see, well, how predictive is truancy of these other bad outcomes? And what they found was enormous, that there was anywhere from 4 times as likelihood to 20 times as likelihood of engaging in delinquent behavior, and also in first-time marijuana use in that 12 to 15-year-old age group. Truancy is a very important indicator that something's wrong at home, something's wrong in the youth's life. And it's just a very good indicator of those bad potential outcomes.
I used to go to school just to meet up with my friends, then I'd bounce out. It was just like, it's like a gathering headquarters.
Hi, you can read a party. Thanks. Grab a book. We're on page 116. Someone want to pass you a book?
The interesting thing about truancy is there's not one cause. There's not one cure. There are numerous reasons why a student may be exhibiting truant behaviors. It could be because of parental substance abuse. It could be due to abuse and neglect in the home. It could be some basic motivational issues. It could be mental health issues.
The vocabulary development and all those pieces in the brain development that need to be in place for successful citizenship is established at a young age.
When a child isn't coming to school on a regular basis, they're going to be missing very important pieces of their education, pieces that sometimes are lost and can never be made up.
You're dooming someone to prison by not forcing them to graduate. I say forcing them to graduate, but somehow we have to instill into them that life will be better if they get an education.
Project Respect was one of the outstanding models that we ran into from our evaluation. We were evaluating these programs, about 50-some programs around the state, and Project Respect was really a standout in getting good results because they not only engaged the students and got the students back into school and got the students more successful in school, but they also did a great job of reaching families.
There was a period of time in my life when I believed that truancy was strictly a school problem and courts had no business in it. And we had much more important things to do. And quite frankly, I was dead wrong on that. And the most important thing that I do today as a judge is work with kids.
His attendance was at least okay.
Yeah, it was at that time.
So what's happening, Mr. Martinez?
He's just having some problems in the classroom, you know, that just refusing to do his work, suggest the after-school tutoring because he is struggling so bad. And I told him all the teachers are going in there after school, but after school I see him walking with his friends and he's taking off, leaving the school grounds. So he just doesn't want to stay after school.
Parents are children's first teachers, and so their input is crucial. However, my philosophy is that if children are not necessarily being engaged at home, then we need to provide that engagement at school. The law helps us partner better with parents to educate everybody on the importance of the early intervention.
I missed around like 51 days of school, and that's when my brother had passed away. I moved back with my mom, and I got papers served to my house saying that I was going to be in truancy court.
Because I really didn't feel that it was my fault that Sarah had missed the 51 days of school, because she always went to school when she was in my care. At first I was a little upset with it, and then after the first time, just seeing what they were doing for these kids, I saw what happened there and everything, and I looked forward to going.
It's absolutely necessary for the court to be involved in the truancy reduction program because of the power that we have as a court to issue orders that are significant. Without that arm of the program, there is no bite, no teeth in the truancy reduction program.
It made me realize, it was a big deal, because I didn't think what I was doing was a big deal. I thought it didn't matter just to me, But when I went to court, having the support of everybody, it helped me realize, that I need to do this, stay on track, get my education.
He realized that he had a lot of people behind him, supporting him, not wanting him to throw away his free education.
And Mom, obviously when she has medical appointments, your job is to make sure that she's getting the makeup work and turning it in on time.
It's not just the kids who are in the truancy court, it's their parents. And to a large extent, the parents are the principal problem, not the kids. Particularly the younger they are, the more it is the parents' problem, not the kids. So the parents are there. That's not been the case before. In addition to that, we have social services that are there from overseeing the hearings and are there ready to intervene on a moment's notice if the court so requests.
We have a lot of kids in our truancy courtroom primarily because we want to address the issue, and we want to address it at the earliest possible time to intervene and see if we can get the kids back on the right track.
I don't know, I thought that made me feel like a bad kid. It made me want to straighten up.
The level of support that local judges, Judge Mays and Magistrate Moss, have in terms of making sure that the needs of students are addressed in Pueblo, to see to it that, if they're truant, they're called into court, and it doesn't matter about a large docket, a small docket, they give of their time, and the results of that kind of attitude in terms of full support for children and families is totally unlike any program that I've ever seen.
Your Honor, this is my last week of work. I have to quit my job so I can just keep a closer eye on these boys. So Saturday is my last day. I mean, I just have to.
So you'll be in school all the time then?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna quit my job. Yeah.
Seems a little silly for Mom to have to shadow a 13-year-old. I appreciate your mom doing it. Do you agree, Benny? I don't know what is going on with you, but I'm going to order a drug test today at the Wellness Center. Something new has happened.
Yes.
What are the allegations?
To go to school every day.
And the school is saying that you haven't done that, and that you knew about the court order and you still refused to go. Does that sound right? Are you admitting that then? Do you want to tell me what's going on? You can come up and tell me if you want. Do you hear what your mom's saying? All the hardship you're placing on her by doing this? She's trying to do her part. Has something changed in your life? I have you do a drug test today, which I'm going to do. Will that be positive? So that's the issue then. Has that changed since the last court date then? So you have two young men that are actively using drugs need to get on top of this. I'm going to set this out for a very short review to get the results of the drug test. And for sentencing, I'm ordering Adaptoval for Benny as well. The next step is PYC.
Project began back in 1999, and basically what the Colorado Department of Education said is that we want to make Pueblo a flagship truancy reduction model.
I think the district has the key role because the students are under our care, and I think when we realize that a program is effective, I think that we need to be able to support and stay with that program and offer the resources that the program needs.
Our primary focus is that first we must capture their heart before we educate their mind, and that's the mission, and that is the goal of Project Respect. With that, we are a strength-based program. We celebrate the strengths of our families. We celebrate the strengths of our students.
The first things we needed to do as a board and as a district was to restructure our how we approached truancy. And that was sort of a first step into letting them really take the ball and run with it.
Well, the idea behind the Project Respect model is that you team an at-risk student with a community advocate, and that person serves as a liaison between the school, the family, and the court, and also provides support not only with the student who's in truancy court, but also for the entire family.
How you doing? Hi, I'm Steven. Steven Ramon Arriaga. Nice to meet you. Have a seat. An advocate, what they do is they have a caseload, a primary caseload of about 20 families. And how they set 20 families is we look at the attendance the prior year. If they have 25 or more absences the prior year, they are eligible for Project Respect. Our goal here is to get you to graduate.
They are school district 60 employees, and they receive a large amount of training, basically through Love and Logic training for parents, Love and Logic training for teachers. Professional development is really huge in becoming a community advocate.
We're also here to help you if you need help with resources to get you to school, bus passes, a ride to school, whatever you need, we can provide that for you too.
Project Respect advocates, once they are looking at each student in that school and find out that student's been missing school, they react immediately to making sure that that student is in school, and that immediately means that same minute that they find out, they're going to call or even make a home visit to make sure that the student is okay and the student is in school.
You dropped him off this morning. He hasn't been to any class yet today.
They're part of the neighborhood from which the students come. They know the neighborhood. They know what's going on in the neighborhood, so that they can alleviate the problems in the environment outside the school as well as inside the school.
The reason why I'm calling, one, to inform you that he is gone from school today, but also to let you know that we're going to have to follow through with the whole truancy court process.
They helped me through a lot. I mean, if it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't have got back into school, and I get good grades now, and I wouldn't have a job without my advocates, you know. They help me stay on track even now. So, but they don't treat me like, you know, like a student or nothing. They treat me like their friend. So.
You've only been here for 10 days, and you missed 5 of those 10 days.
And then when I get here, I just leave.
I understand that.
So why even try?
Because we're not giving up on you. We eliminate excuses why they're not coming to school, whether it be a school uniform, transportation, whatever the reason may be, school supplies. We eliminate that excuse with the funds that we raise throughout the summer.
We've been very creative in trying to capture students' hearts and minds. We've had the symphony involved in the schools. We've had students involved in extracurricular activities and leadership roles, and in the Peace Jam, in things that students never would have been involved with absent the Project Respect model and the truancy reduction model that we've created.
I honestly believe the greatest incentive that any of our students get is acknowledgement for doing well academically.
And so we need Project Respect to go out there and grab people back and say, we need you, we want you, your child is important, you're important, and you are an integral part of our society.
Stephen, that's not your attitude. What's going on? Something's going on. That's not the same kid I talked to just 10 days ago.
When the student begins to so trust the environment they're in, that they begin to change favorably.
You made the big choice. You made the turnaround yourself. You chose to do better, and we're happy for you. We're proud of you.
Thanks.
Benny Valdez. Okay. How are you?
Good.
All right. Let's see. Attendance is very good. Are you still living with your auntie?
Yeah.
Okay. Where's Auntie today? Is she working?
Yeah, she's working.
Okay.
He's with me on Sundays, Mondays, and Tuesdays.
Okay, so you must be doing really well with your UAs and your
Yeah, I'm
treatment
doing
plan. And
See students who are happy to be back in court just so that they can say to one of the judges, here's my report card, here's the progress that I've made, and then to see the advocates that are standing with them to serve or to give testimony that their attendance have improved, their attitude about school has improved, and just their self-concept is now all of a sudden changed as a result of this progress is absolutely phenomenal.
okay, so summer time might be a good time to transition the children because they'll still be in summer school, so we'll still have that extra monitoring. But either way, even when the DNN is dismissed, you'll still be in truancy court until these young men graduate high school. Okay, Benny, good job. I'm very proud of you. You've done exactly what you've been asked to do, with the exception of that math grade. You need to work on that math grade, okay? I know we've had a few slip-ups, but you know, we work with the positives, strength-based, and I'm very proud of your mom for doing her part as well.
I really believe that the most significant thing I've done, even from the school board through the legislation, is the legislation I did with Judge Mays now. Because that adds 1 extra year on either side, 2 years, to a mandatory education for children. And my hope and prayers are that will make a difference in a child's life.
The stats will tell you that we've been able to reduce the truancy rate with our students that are in the program. They've reduced their truancies by 77%. And also, they've been able to improve their grade point averages by 2 letter grades, which is pretty significant.
Members of the class of 2007, teachers, family members, and guests, good evening. It is an honor and a privilege for me to be here tonight. This is truly a time to celebrate.
The first person I'd like to introduce, and I'm very honored and privileged to introduce her, Sarah G. Pino. Sarah, you're indeed my hero and my inspiration. You're an outstanding mother, daughter, friend, and student. Sarah will be attending PCC this fall. Congratulations, Sarah. We wish you luck and success.
I just want to thank all my teachers, my advocates, Ms. McGraw, Mr. Millard, and the secretaries, and a special thank to Magistrate Moss. Most of all, I want to thank my mom, my son, and my family.
Giving kids hope, options, opportunity in life to succeed. It's the most important work we do. All the information I have is that Carrie really made a big turnaround.
You had 14 unexcused absences and 11 tardies, and your grades weren't where they should be. So you've made significant progress. I think she deserves a big round of applause. Good job.
He's done a superb job. I think Jordan and his father are all on the right track here, and I don't think we need to have him come back.
Selena's been with me since 2004 and has made quite an improvement in her attendance and her grades since then. So keep up the good work.
She has perfect attendance, right? Just to me, she's pretty bright, so if she was there all the time, she'd be off the charts on this stuff, so. Man, I'm not gonna throw a party anymore, I'm always gonna show.
Okay, well, that was our video, and you know, but I just, need to let you know that those practices are still good practices, and although, keep in mind, truancy court was the last resort. All the other interventions that we did in the school, we the plan. As we know, working with our kids sometimes could really throw us a curve. And so, so we just really we needed to really stay on top of lost internet connection. Okay, sorry, lost internet connection for a minute there. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So, what we saw in that video, that was the work that we did. And and they were able to navigate to what resources were in that neighborhood. That's, I think, what made it so successful, is because of the work that they did with the families. I think I'm going. I think I have my. I think I'm going in and out here. So, Judge, did you have anything to say about the video?
No, I think it speaks for itself. Thank you.
So we're talking about truancy versus chronic absence. And what we really were focusing in on was a truancy court's only unexcused absences. How we define truancy were the unexcused absences, the emphasis on compliance with school rules, and relies on legal and administrative solutions at times. Our chronic absence were excused, unexcused suspensions, emphasis on academics, impact of missed days, and uses community-based positive strategies. Judge, you want to talk about when we had that big epidemic with regard to kids with asthma and some of the strategies you used there?
Well, yeah, obviously we take every illness that a child has very seriously. But we also, through our experience, found that sometimes children were missing more school than they really needed to miss. And I don't mean that they were flaunting it or anything like that, but I think we as parents sometimes get a little bit concerned that we're not really taking as good care of our children as we should, and maybe keep them home longer than we should have to. But to get to Terry's point in a minute, let me suggest that one of the things that we found in doing our data collection and all that is that there were a lot of kids that were missing school with excused absences for medical reasons. And so what we did is we went to the local medical society and told them that, you know, obviously we weren't trying to be experts in their particular field, but we wanted their help in terms of determining that they should be involved in the holistic approach to kids, whether it be mental health or physical health concerns. And more importantly, what we were discovering is that, for instance, we'd have a student that had a doctor's appointment at, say, 9 o'clock in the morning, and they'd have their appointment. They'd be done by 9:30, 10 o'clock, and then they stay home the rest of the day. And so we asked the medical profession to help us with that and to encourage the kids, look, once you leave here, you know, you need to get back to school and everything and like that. And it worked fantastic. It was fantastic. The medical profession wrote a big, long letter to all of their members indicating the importance of education and having kids in school and the importance of having kids in school. The thing with the asthma thing, and we all know that asthma is a very, very serious concern. But once again, I didn't know the intricacies of asthma and everything. So what I did is I called the head public health doctor here in town, and we got educated on exactly what the parameters of asthma were. And so that now we were able to say that, okay, we understand that there may be times when you have to stay home, but we are able to help you with any particular medical problems you have in school as long as we know about them. And so we would make whatever efforts were available to make sure that we had inhalers and breathalyzers, or whatever, not breathalyzers, but inhalers, and we knew the students and made sure that we knew who our students were that had these concerns, and did everything we could to make sure that they were in school and safe by being in school. We would never run the risk of hurting anybody. So once again, it was this belief we have that it's a community issue. And so in this particular case, with regard to illness and stuff, we went to the people that could help us most with it, and that was the medical profession. And they've just been absolutely fabulous with us. And the number of kids that we have seen, the number of kids that we experienced after we had that meeting with the medical profession decreased dramatically in terms of medical excused absences following that meeting. I think that's what you were talking about, Terry?
Yes, you're absolutely correct, Judge. Thank you. So we have a saying, and you know, we have two different philosophies, or not philosophies, but pathways that we look at when we're in education. You know, as teachers, we're always taught the Bloom's taxonomy of learning. So we want to make sure that our kids are learning that how do we become teachers? How do we present our lessons? And, you know, in all that different type, because we want our kids to be scholars. We want them to be all that they can be, to reach their highest potential. But before we do any of that, we've got to look at Maslow's theory, their hierarchy, because if we don't have Maslow, we can't do the Bloom stuff. So the Maslow is making sure that our kids, all their insecurities are taken care of. We want to make sure that, you know, we want them to really reach self-actualization, and then really achieving their full potential. By that, they have a sense of belonging, they have a sense of self-esteem, they're feeling safe, their safety needs are met, their housing and their food insecurities are gone, you know, that they're in a good place to learn. When you have a kid show up to school and they're hungry, or there's been a shooting at home, or, you know, domestic violence, or whatever that could be, our kids are not ready to go into bloom. You know, we tell them we don't know what's going on every time our kids go home. And when they show up, you know, as a principal, I made sure that I stood outside my door, the school door in the morning, to greet every single one of my kids, because I needed to know how they were doing. If Johnny's head was down, that was the one I knew that I needed to go and tap Johnny on the shoulder and say, honey, what happened? Are you okay? Is there anything I can do? And, you know, sometimes you'll get it, and sometimes, you know, sometimes it's just too much for them to deal with. And then you'll see it manifest in other different ways throughout the day with their behavior. I also made sure that my teachers were standing at the door between classes, along greeting their kids as they're coming through the door, making sure that they felt welcome, that we knew if they were absent yesterday, that we didn't say, oh my God, you missed another day. You know, that we were really saying something positive. You know what, we really missed you yesterday. You know, is there anything we can do to help you? And then having one of the peers come up and say, hey, Johnny, we missed you yesterday. You know, giving them that sense of belonging. Okay, next one. So we talked about making sure that we have our multi-tiered systems of support. After one absence, what are you going to do? After two absences, what are you going to do? 3, what are you going to do? You always need to have a plan, and you need to make sure it's consistent, it's done with fluency, and that it's done with people that our kids really can relate to. Not just a robocall. You know, our plan was, hey, after one absence, we would have one of the advocates go ahead and call home and figure out, you know, make a contact home or do a home visit. And they would go out and, you know, and if it was something, you know, we'd call first. And if it was a doctor's appointment or something, that, you know, that was okay. After the second absence, you know, we had something. After the third absence, now it's starting to get kind of serious. So, you know what, we're going to be writing some letters in addition to doing the call and doing all the other stuff. That after the 4 absence, because our state law stated that 4 absences within a month or 10 within a school year, then you were considered habitually truant. And documentation. I made sure I was in charge of the advocates in my building. So we had meetings, and we would meet once a week. Okay, what do you have, Ramon? Tell me about your kids. Tell me about your caseload. And my door was always open to the advocates, and they always knew, you know, what interventions to go for. Making sure their documentation was in line, and making sure we weren't doing the same old stuff and getting the same results. You know, we wanted to make sure that our data was driving our interventions. Okay. So we talked about, and Senator Tapia talked about, you know, our prison population. One of the things that we talked about, we're finding also, is that our girl population is really catching up, because it used to be the boy population that we really needed to be concerned with. But, you know, in 2023, in June, nearly 60,000 young people under the age of 18 are incarcerated in juvenile jails and prisons in the United States on any given day. You know, we hear this a lot. Well, you guys are just creating a pipeline to prison. You're creating the pipeline to prison by having a truancy, a problem-solving court, and introducing them into the judicial system. And Judge could speak to this better than I, because he has had some very heated conversation where I have witnessed him standing on chairs having this conversation. It's been so heated. So do you want to go into that a little bit, Judge?
Sure. There's always been a debate going on about status offenders and whether or not they should be subject to incarceration. Let me start by saying in Colorado now, there's a very limited time that separate and apart from having committed what would be a crime if committed by an adult. For contempt of court, very limited time that a student can spend in detention. I was one of those that believed that detention had a purpose. And my point being is that as I've indicated, I've presided over just about every kind of docket you can see and you can imagine. And the one thing I am sure of is that if you do not have a respect for law, that there's a very good chance that your freedom is going to be interrupted at various times during your life. And so my philosophy was, and I had people tell me all the time, I can't believe that you would send somebody to send a student to jail for not going to school. I said, I never ever sent a student to jail for not going to school. They said, well, you had your truancy court. I said, no, I sentenced students in contempt court, in court for contempt for not obeying a valid court order, which is a lot different than not going to school. If children are not taught early on in their life that there needs to be a respect for the rule of law, then we're going to be talking about those 80% of those adults in prison who did not graduate from high school. So I don't think it's something that should be done, used extravagantly, but I definitely think it is an option that should be considered. I am one of those that have yet to be, it's been yet to be proven to me that status offenders who go into detention for contempt matters like that are going to be career criminals. I've not seen a study that supports that, nor do I believe it. So I respect those on the other side of the spectrum that prefer not to do what I had done in the past. But if I were still on the bench today, I still would not have a different position than I did then.
And Judge, could you talk a little bit about when you went to the Supreme Court, so you asked to talk to our kids?
Sure. For those of you that are familiar with the court system, you're familiar with the ex parte communication prohibition, and that is that whenever you have a parties in court, the judge is prohibited from talking to one of the parties without talking to all of the parties. They have to all be present when it's going on. Well, the one thing we've learned in dealing with children is that time is very fleeting, and we don't have an awful lot of liberty in terms of following some of the old court rules that we have. For instance, if I want to bring this child into court and I need to get their attorney, I need to give them 5 days notice or whatever it is. What we have in the interim period of time is another 5 days of school that's missed. So I and some others went to the Colorado Supreme Court and asked them to declare truancy court as a problem-solving court And the reason being is that I needed to have the opportunity to discuss these issues with the kids and their parents immediately upon them happening, and not waiting until I had all of the parties in the courtroom. So I asked the Supreme Court, along with others, to waive that particular prohibition and allow those that were working in truancy or problem-solving court to carry on conversations with students immediately to try to get to the problem. Let me give you an example. I have a student in truancy court and has been doing well, and then all of a sudden I'm getting a call from the school indicating that the student hasn't been going to school for some reason or another. I set up a system whereby I could talk to that student immediately and the parent and find out what's going on. Why are we not going to school? And then hopefully get things back on track again. And it proved to be very, very successful in being able to address a problem immediately rather than waiting 5 to 10 days and having some additional missed days of school. So once again, that was something that stood in the way of what we felt was a good truancy court policy. And the way to resolve that was to go to the Supreme Court. They granted our request, and truancy court was designated as a problem-solving court and allowed us to carry on these conversations where we were prohibited from doing them before.
And that was so very helpful, because the sooner we get to the root of the problem, the better off everything's going to be. Just to reiterate that mental health services is really a big asset to our program. And Judge presided over mental health court at our local state hospital. And, you know, if we go back to some of our data, studies have shown that between 65 to 70% of minors in the juvenile justice system have a diagnosable mental health condition. And so he is a very strong advocate for mental health for our children and for the sake of our families as well. So we just cannot stress how critical that is to have that in your program as a very strong leg to utilize. The next slide. So the data tells us that in Washington state, several groups experience higher rates of chronic absenteeism, specifically students who are homeless, in foster care from low-income families, or have disabilities, have some of the lowest attendance rates. Among the racial and ethnic groups, our Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islanders and American Indian and Alaska Native students have the lowest attendance rates. Additionally, low-income students have a higher chronic absentee rate compared to their non-low-income peers. So we've done a lot of work within the Native American communities, and we've seen a lot of this happening. Okay, next slide. So a more detailed, you know, we really need to look at the grade band. 12th graders have the lowest attendance rate among all the grade bands in Washington. The socioeconomic status, low-income students, and students from foster care are more likely to experience chronic absenteeism. And we all know, you know, why that would be so. A lot of times our kids in foster care tend to move from house to house, and which really disrupts their education. Race and ethnicity, Native American, we talked about this, and Indian, Alaskan Native students have lower attendance rates, and our kids with disabilities experience higher rates of chronic absenteeism. So it's very important to note that chronic absenteeism can have serious consequences, including academic difficulties and higher risk of dropping out of school. So economic challenges or factors across are those transportation, access to facilities, academic support, and issues related to physical and mental health, our housing and our food insecurities, all of which especially serve in disadvantaged communities. And I know you guys do a lot of work within the rural communities. So, having a supermarket close by or anything else, and especially if our families don't have the transportation, that could be a big challenge in your communities. This is a little video. I don't think we're going to be able to get it, but it's just equity versus equality. And, what we're talking about is we could give the same supports to all of our kids and still not equate to equality or equity. So what we have to do is we got to make sure that we're differentiating their needs, that we give the right supports to the right kids at the right time. And so that's just really kind of the gist of this video. Okay. So what is the problem? So you really need to find out the why of poor attendance. Make sure you're keeping your data. Make sure that you're reviewing the data and why your kids are being absent. Assist the caregivers and gathering community resources that are hindering school attendance, and know your community, know the culture, and also celebrate the strengths of your students and your caregivers. When we go out and we do home visits, we don't need to go out and say, hey, look, your kid was absent again. What's going on? Come on. We really need to get your kid to school. You know what? They know what's going on. They know that they're having some problems. So when we're approaching our families, let's do it from, again, our strength-based perspective. Hey, we really noticed that Johnny's been having some difficulty coming to school. What is it that we could help you with? What are some of the things that we can help you with? And sometimes it takes a long time before you can really get that what you need, because sometimes they don't even know what they need, because it could just be a whole ball of wax of everything going wrong at the same time. So if we can get them just to get in there and just go one thing at a time to let them know that they don't need to feel overwhelmed, that we're there to support them, we're there to help them. And so we can have their students be successful. And then frequent contact with your the caregivers and the student is critical in achieving student engagement. Just let them know you care. When you let people know you care, you're probably going to get a lot more out of them than just saying, oh, you're gone again today, or oh, what now? Or, let's refrain from using that type of language. So again, these are our kids that come into our buildings every single day. Could someone help me with these? I'm late for my math class. Look at all the baggage that they're carrying with them. They're carrying homelessness, sickness, hunger, and taking care of their family members or whatever that may be. When our kids come with their backpacks, a lot of times their backpacks are not filled with books. Their backpacks are filled with a lot of emotional stuff, a lot of emotional baggage. And so we really need to break down those barriers and really make sure that we're providing those carrots, those resources and everything else so they can come to school.
Interrupting here for just a minute, going back to something we've said throughout the presentation is data, data, data. If you're going to be going out for financial or other kind of support from the community, your best friend is going to be the data that you've compiled. It's time consuming. It can be a pain in the neck and everything like that, but it's also going to be the thing that makes your program much more successful than if you didn't have it.
On to Judge's point, in our program, we always had an external evaluator who collected our data. and it wasn't because I didn't have time. Well, I didn't have time to collect all the data, but I wanted to make sure that it was done from a very neutral perspective. When we first got the grant, we had an evaluator who sat on the team for Colorado Department of Education. And, she was the biggest naysayer. And, oh, it'll never work. It'll never work in that community. You always give them money, but nothing ever works. And on and on and on. And so when they asked, who would you like to have be your external evaluator? I said, I want her. I said, because, I want to prove her wrong, number one. And number two, I want to, maybe she knows more than we do. And maybe she has better ideas than we do. So let's involve her. And so she has since passed. Her name is Dr. Marion Baker. But she was really one of our biggest critics. In fact, she met with Judge and I, and she said, you guys are going to start this pilot program. And what I want you to do is pick some of the schools that you're going to be successful at, because we need this data to look really good. And I looked at Judge, and Judge looked at me, and I said, nope, we're not going to do that. And she said, why not? And I said, I want it done at the most difficult schools we have, because I know that if it succeeds at our difficult schools, it's going to work in our not so difficult schools. And she really became a believer in the program and was with us for about 10 years being our external evaluator. And she was really into what we were doing, and wrote some really fabulous reports on everything. So truancy takes all hands on deck. You got to make sure that everyone is there to build relationships with our kids, that we have buy-in from all of our staff members, from our community members, that we're building relationships. Involve your lunch people, involve your janitors, involve everyone that works in your school. I worked at a school that the janitor was probably the best guy in building relationships with our kids, because they knew that they were able to go help him after lunch and clean off the tables and put the chairs back to where they were. They had a sense of purpose. They took some ownership in their building. And, they would always ask, when's Mr. Derrick going to come and get us? When is he going to come and get us? And they really look forward to that. So, and that kept them coming, they loved our janitor. Next one. So make sure, more importantly, that everybody has a community resource guide. If there are issues that come about that your families are needing, make sure that we have phone numbers and addresses for human services, mental health providers, departments of rec, local businesses, law enforcement, courts. We got to make sure that we're identifying our groups of volunteers, identify potential rewards for kids. And we don't have to identify the rewards for kids. All we have to do is ask them. Sometimes we overthink stuff, and let them take ownership of their program. Let them set up their little school store and what they're going to get. Let them go out and ask, for those donations, for whether it be McDonald's coupons or whatever, and identify opportunities for kids to play meaningful roles and achieve success. Again, ownership. Let them take ownership of their education, because in the end, it is their education. If you're going to be using a community advocate, which we really strongly recommend, you need to decide on the approximate caseload that they're going to be handling. You've got to have a referral process, because not every kid is going to be referred to that community advocate. You've got to develop your first contact procedures. have they followed all of the multi-tiered systems of support interventions? Have your plan ready by referring to the data. Use data-driven decisions and ask the family and the student what their goals are. It's very critically important when you're doing that intake. What are your goals? And let them be their goals, you know? And again, letting them have the ownership.
One of the things that we felt was very, very important, I'll bring up a couple of things that we learned through trial and error, was you cannot have perfect attendance if you miss the very first day of school. So what's going on the very first day of school? Somebody's going out and getting their backpack. They're getting their supplies. They're getting their clothes organized for the school year. They're figuring out their transportation. So have that already done by the first day of school so that everybody is ready to go to school on the first day of school. And we found it very, very helpful. And also to identify problem areas where someone didn't have the clothing. Okay, well, what are we going to do to get the clothing and everything like that? So you can help yourself quite a bit in terms of getting ready by doing some advanced planning. The one thing, and I want to make sure that we don't forget this, is Terry talked, and obviously mental health is a big issue today, and rightfully so. One of the things to remember, and we had to learn this the hard way, was we had, during the school year, we had our mental health teams ready to go and all that stuff. Well, then all of a sudden we had spring break, we had summer break, we had Christmas break, and we had neglected to say depression doesn't take a vacation during Christmas. It doesn't take a vacation during the summer months or during spring break or anything like that. So what we learned from that is that we have to make sure that we're addressing these issues even when the children are not in school with us, that we are making sure that their needs are being met all of the time. So those are just some little things. And as I indicated, we learned that the hard way when we realized, well, wait a minute, you know, these kids went 2 weeks without the services that were probably necessary for them. So just a little tidbit there for you folks as well.
That's very important. And when we go back to what improves school attendance, we had real champions in our community who would give us, we have a Sonic here. And so one of the attorney's friends owned the Sonic chain here in Pueblo. And so he would get Sonic coupons, and so the kids would get Sonic coupons. Or, you know, we had others that would provide movie tickets and gift cards and community college tours, or just picking a lunch with your favorite teacher or your favorite person in the building. Tickets to sports games our kids love. As I mentioned before, we had the Denver Broncos who would do fundraising activity for us, and plus they would do football camps and other events with us as well. They would take us to Aspen with them when they were doing camps. And for our kids, going to Aspen was really a real treat. And not only that, but we had some of the community members in Aspen who had these gorgeous mansions, and they would invite our kids over for barbecues and things like that. And kids walking into these houses that have streams inside of them. I mean, it was just beyond belief, the experiences that they had. They were also, we have what it's called the Peace Jam, and they were able to meet 12 Nobel Peace Prize laureates up at Denver University. And they met the Dalai Lama, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Rigoberto Menchu Tom, Nelson Mandela, a lot of the Nobel Peace Prize laureates, and very fortunate. And it was because they had heard about not the Peace Path, but the organization that sponsored the laureates had heard about us. So they invited us to go into that gathering, which was just phenomenal. Next slide. So what are options? So we don't want to ever, they have to earn their rewards. Withholding rewards is not a good thing. A lot of times we did the good cop, bad cop. If you really do this, and then the bad cop, well, no, but just there's different ways of working, and which kind of strategies work with which kids. The cooperative relationship with the court alternatives like the truancy mediation workshops, restorative justice, and community college workshops as well. So inappropriate options: never withhold learning as a punishment, suspension. Make sure you're utilizing your restorative justice programs. Shaming, please, let's not ever do that. And we got to really provide that professional development to our staff as well, because it's hard work working in those classrooms. Being retired, and they've called me up and said, can you come in and teach some special ed classes? Wow, that just brought me back to, okay. Yeah, this is hard work. Our teachers work hard, and they need all the professional development we can offer them. Automatically failing, if they didn't show up, you get an F for today, or grade reductions. Make sure you're working with the administrators and the teachers. Give them opportunities to make up work, so they feel success. And last but not least, evaluate your program. The things that we did with our data, once we collected all of our data, we shared it with our community members. We wanted to make sure that our school board especially knew. So Judge was always nominated to give the presentation, because the school board always likes to hear a presentation from the judge. And who's going to tell a judge no when it comes to funding? So he was our big champion in really displaying our data. Make sure that your community knows how much it costs every time a kid drops out of school, because it costs a lot of money every time a kid drops out of school. We're going to be paying lots of different things, welfare, Medicaid. Our dropouts cost us a lot of money. So let your community know how much a dropout costs. And then always ask yourself, can we do better? Is there something else we can do? Is there something else we need to add? And always be opening and inviting new members to sit at the table with us. So, and a process evaluation is good when your program is new. And if you're replicating an established program, it's often good to ask those who have already been there, done that, and got the bumps on their head to see, what pathways would probably be the best to go down. Your outcome evaluation, how well is it working? For what proportion of students is it working? Do the good effects last? Okay, once a kid gets out of problem-solving court, they're doing good for a couple of weeks, and then they're probably right back. What we always like to do is that our kids didn't really ever graduate. We put them on monitoring status until we knew that it was safe enough for them to step down. So that advocate would stay with them, just checking in, not as often, but just making sure that they know that they still had that support there. So good when your program is established and your evaluation is ready. When somebody says, how's your program? You're ready to whip out that data and show them, oh yeah, we had a really tough time in March, but guess what? In September, we did really well. And looking at your data, analyzing it, and having those deep conversations. And then really do your longitudinal analysis. Okay, how did you do this year compared to last year? What were some of the things that were going on? Okay. And then measuring your outcomes. Make sure that you do your SMART goals. Make sure that you're doing your measurable benchmarks. How much did your unexcused absences drop by? How many grades were below a C? Don't have vague goals like, oh, we had fewer absences than we did last year, or yeah, our grades are better. How much better? Let people know how much better they did. Next. Doing your record reviews. We did interviews. We interviewed our kids. Hey, what did you like about the program? What didn't you like about the program? We also did a lot of focus groups. And with our focus groups, we had our external evaluator do the focus groups. And our focus groups were with our community members was one group, students was another group, parents was another group, and then our education people were another group. So we were able to bring those, that data from the focus groups together. And we also did surveys as well to really see where we needed to improve and what we needed to do. So keeping your data up to date, progress monitoring, monthly meetings with your stakeholders, that was really very, very critically important. And Judge would call those once a month. And once a month, each agency provided lunch. And, we talked about the gaps and the progress goals. Remember, truancy is a community issue. We did some newsletters, the importance of attendance. We did our reports to the school board. We never did get to city council, but we were headed there. And I think that's an important thing because you want to make sure that that's included as well. So just to wrap it all up, understanding your root causes, make sure you have your champions, like Judge was talking about, your legislatures, your senators. So if there's a policy that needs to be changed, be proactive. If you know it's for the good of our kids, how can anyone say no? And get behind some supportive initiatives and the implementation of recommendations. Make sure that you are implementing your recommendations with fidelity and with transparency. Judge, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. Once again, I just want to say, you saw in that one video that I said that there was no more important work than I did than working with these kids. I believed that then, and I believe that now. I'm still involved in some matters involving kids, and I always will be, I suppose, even though I'm a pretty old kid by myself right now. Be true to yourself. Know it's hard work. Don't take no for an answer. Something gets in your way, find a legal way around it. I'm not going to suggest an illegal way, that's for sure. And enjoy the work that you're doing. It's a huge satisfaction when you see these kids. Even now, I've been out of the business now for 13 years, and I'll be at a restaurant and I'll have families come up to me and talk about the time in truancy court, and love our families. They want success. They do, and they will embrace it. Best wishes to you. I hope this was somewhat helpful to you.
Thank you, Judge. Yes, we normally we really spend a long time on this presentation, and it's because of all of the questions and the answers, and we really use this as really a discussion presentation. So, you know, if you have questions, you know, just email us, and we'd be happy to get back with you. But normally this is usually a full day presentation, and you know, with all the conversation and everything else that we have going on. So remember, this is hard work. But most importantly, remember to take care of yourself. Make time for celebrations, both for yourself and your teammates. Celebrate those victories of your kids. Before you go home, do some relaxation exercise so you can be a productive family member. Remember that your family needs you too, and self-care is so crucial. Make time for your activities that you enjoy, that has nothing to do with school or issues of truancy. And my last point, I hope you all learned something new, or there's some new ideas and strategies await your program. And next slide. So self-care is not selfish. You cannot serve from an empty vessel. So you got to take care of you, because our kids are important, and they're worth it. They're worth every single minute. We need to stop just pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in. And that is why we do the work we do. Thank you for being with us today. Hopefully you enjoyed this presentation. Again, we would welcome any questions you may have. Just want to say thanks to Judge Mays. He is my hero. And, you know, this work of truancy reduction, problem solving court is probably some of the most important work that has ever been done. So again, thank you. Take care of yourselves, and hope you have a good summer.